All right, everyone, and we are live. Hey,
All right, and here we are.
yeah, here we are. Oh, damn. I don't know about you, Chris, but my day has been a bit nuts. Work was not too bad, but then I came home to kind of a bit of a shitty evening, as I told you about. Our poor little pup, not being able to hold it well in the crate, but she's doing all right now. Oh, I'm gonna close the door. Actually, my husband just got home, so I'm gonna close this door quick. She's good.
Okay, all right, that sounds good.
All right, and I am back.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
okay.
long day.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We had a few accidents in the crate as well with our new baby Gideon, and he's crazy little boy. But I'll tell you what, the good thing is he's learning how to hold it and everything, and he's doing really well at like telling
Yeah.
us that he needs to go outside. But sometimes even the older dogs,
Yeah.
if it's
Well,
if they gotta go,
yeah.
they gotta go.
Well, Freya's been a bit under the weather, but she's doing better. With that in mind, though, speaking of the weather, we are in November now, and of course that means Thanksgiving is on its way. And I know I love it. So everyone, today, this stream is called Triggered Turkey, Thanksgiving and Politics. Chris and I have had this discussion before. I have actually had this discussion with many people over time. There is a taboo in our culture that you do not mix politics and family during Thanksgiving. I personally uh, disagree with it. I don't know how you feel about that, Chris.
That's a good question, Kevin. I mean, I personally think that talking about things like religion and politics should be something that you should be able to do with your family because theoretically those should be the closest people to you on earth.
Hmm.
And who best to have those discussions with and bounce ideas off of than those people?
Yeah.
Um, so when they want to shut you down, um, there's a little bit of a problem with that, I think. But again, the discussion needs to be kept respectful, and I think that as long as you do that, then it's okay. You don't have to worry about convincing someone of something. You should just be okay about talking about it. That's how I see it.
Absolutely. So I think with that, we have actually a news clip, and this news clip, in my opinion, well, let's watch it, and then we'll discuss whether or not we agree or disagree with the recommendation here.
All right, here we go.
Talk about football. Talk
Okay.
about your favorite memories. Talk about what you're thankful for, or even just the traffic, which seems a lot worse lately.
But when you sit down for Thanksgiving dinner with friends and extended family, there's one topic you should probably avoid. As Fox 13's Ariel Placencia shows us, etiquette experts and common sense says, keep politics away from the dinner table.
Thanksgiving is a time that brings people together. Millions of Americans are taking that long drive to grandma's house or catching a cross-country flight to reunite around the dinner table, hopefully creating new memories. But bring up politics and it all goes south.
Well, I mean, it's pretty much a good topic to avoid at all right now. So, yeah, because people are very polarized about what they think is going to happen and people wishing terrible things upon other people based on how.
All right. So here's the thing, Chris. I mean, as you touched on earlier, and I know you and I actually tend to agree on this. In response to this, I have to say straightforward, I disagree, of course. It talked because if you can't have civil conversation with those you love, as you were referencing earlier, regardless of the topic, even if it's a hot button topic, if you can't have a civil conversation with those you love at a time of gathering, what hope is there really for the rest of the world? For you to be able to engage in a civil fashion with people outside of your family? Because notice the woman there who was interviewed. She says, well, they mentioned it going south, and she talked about it being polarized. about our culture being polarized, which it is. Mind you, this is from even last year, 2024. So we were right there on the presidential election, of course. Now, for me, the reason it's polarized is ironically because of this advice right here, in my opinion. I think the fact that we are discouraged from having these conversations is contributing to the polarization of our country. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, we need to be able to talk through things. I will say that I had family members, especially when I started becoming way more active in politics, gaining a little bit of traction and even a bit of notoriety. When I would talk about those things, their knee jerk reaction was to reject it and kind of wish that I didn't bring it up. And well, what that said to me is, well, first of all, I saw it as a big slap in the face. I'll be quite honest. It's like, okay, well, you are the people that I should be safe to talk about this stuff
Mhm.
with,
Yeah.
regardless of whether you agree with me or not, because it goes back to what I said beforehand. I'm not looking to convince you of anything. That's not what I'm looking to do. One, in my case, I'm just telling you about what's going on in my political life. I mean, because I do have a weird little political life that maybe the average person doesn't have, you know, and, so I wanted to share things about that. Well, of course, I'm going to talk about the things that I'm fighting for, so instead of being offended by it or not wanting to talk about it, why don't you tell me, and this is just me talking to those family members who I wish would have approached things better, why don't you tell me where I'm wrong, or maybe even how I can improve my message? Because I'm open to ideas. I don't claim to have all the answers. I'm just saying, okay, this is what I think, given the facts and the situation. But if you disagree with my interpretation of the facts and the situation, then let me know why you disagree and why maybe
Hmm.
I should see things a little bit differently. Again, here's the thing, Kevin. It takes true adults to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And, I really hate to say it, but true adults are in low supply.
Nah, Chris, I agree with you because here's the thing, and you bring up a good point. For those of us who are engaged in politics and culture and everything, that is especially difficult. When people ask me what I'm doing, right? How things have been. What we do here is a big part of my life. The
Mm.
videos I create, the content that I create, while not as regular as I'd like it to be, plan to change that. It is a big part of my life. And when we both worked, when I was out there working to protect children, still doing that. Do that obviously during Pride Month. We go undercover at local Pride events. That is a part of my life. So it's kind of odd though, because then I go to like Thanksgiving dinner, right? And if I'm asked, what's going on in your life? It's kind of like I'm supposed to just completely push aside. And I don't think like I said, I think we should be able to have these conversations, and here's why. So Chris, I actually, and it's gonna probably lead into our first slide, um is yeah,
Yeah, there we go.
there we
I was
go. All right,
behind.
so
I was behind.
I have a personal story for you folks, but first I'm going to read these two article headlines that we have because every year when we get to Thanksgiving, there are usually articles that come out telling people how to deal with their relatives, right? And there's different types of messaging, whether you're getting it from the left or from the right. We're going to start off with the left. So here are here are two article headlines, and we're not going to read the articles themselves, but we're just going to read the headlines and a little bit of the note in them, and then go from there and have a discussion. All right. So, from the Nation, This Thanksgiving, it's time to take on your conservative relatives. That sounds a bit combative, huh? Contrary to popular opinion, the holidays are not a time to navigate your uncle's bigoted MAGA jokes. They're the time to confront him. All right, that's the nation. That's the first one, folks. Second, Esquire. How do you handle a Trump supporting drunk uncle at Thanksgiving? Now, I want to point out one of these articles is from 2016, one of these articles is from 2019, and I just gotta love how the left is obsessed with drunk Trump supporting uncles. I'm just gonna say see, here we have two different publications, 3 years apart, and they're both talking about dealing with drunk uncles. And the one right off the bat is saying confront that drunk uncle. And Chris, I want to tell a little bit of story if you don't mind, because this relates to me on a very much a personal level. A number of years ago, when I was in my more left-leaning days, I went with my husband to a holiday gathering, right, Thanksgiving, and there were friends of the family there, and I was much more left-leaning, like I said, in my mind. They said something that infuriated me. And because I had been locked in an echo chamber for so long, because I hadn't really allowed myself to be exposed to different perspectives on issues, I blew my lid. And I ended up swearing at the individuals, cussing and stuff. And this ended up in a bit of a rift for a while with my in-laws, unfortunately, I know. I eventually lost those family friends. But I will admit, to a degree, I'm happy that it happened, and here's why. It forced me to step back and look at myself, right? Because everyone else had remained calm, right? Everyone else had remained very calm. I was the one flipping my lid, blowing my top, and when I looked back on it, I felt so embarrassed. I was like, I was like, okay, disagreeing with them wasn't the problem. That wasn't the problem that I disagreed with them. It was the fact that I blew my top and started swearing at these individuals. That was the problem. And so, eventually we started talking again. I got back, in good with my in-laws, and I eventually, I had a conversation with those family friends and ended up apologizing for my behavior. But like I said, to a degree, I'm happy it happened because it helped wake me up from the echo chamber that I was trapped in. And that right there is why I full-heartedly support these conversations, politics, the culture taking place during Thanksgiving. And I'm going to notice, because we're going to bring up a different one in a bit, Chris, but I notice there's a very different message depending on whether these articles about the holidays are from the left or if they're from the right. Right now, we're focusing
Mhm.
on the verbiage, the feeling, the vibe coming from the left here in these articles. Chris, what's your response to this?
Well, I want to say that this captures the spirit of the left very well in one regard, but I am going to follow up with a little bit of criticism of the right too. But let me get to the left first. Um, the left seems far more likely to insist that you agree with them, whereas people on the right generally don't seem to insist upon that as much. So, of course, here I am, the conservative gay dude. The family members that I was talking about aren't conservative.
Mm,
So, of course, they insisted that I agree with them. They didn't come right out and say it, but that's why they didn't want to hear me talk, because people on the left cannot stand the fact that someone they love and care about might actually disagree with them. So it breaks their
mm,
little leftist hearts when that happens. Okay, here's my criticism of the right, though. Sometimes people on the right, not as often, but sometimes people on the right act just like people on the left. They also insist that you agree with them. And that might be over religion, politics, or whatever the case may be. But I've seen it. So, I mean,
mm,
while I do think that this sort of negative way of approaching people does come predominantly from the left, trust me, I have seen people on the right act like big babies too,
Yeah. So
and that's the thing.
So yeah, let's focus a little bit more on the right. We can talk about both, but let's go to the next slide there, because there we have articles from the right, headlines from the right, and folks. I'm gonna read this to you, of course, especially for those listening, not watching. That's one of the things we're gonna be doing now a bit more now that we're out there audio. So I'm gonna read these articles, the sources, the headlines, and a little bit of description underneath, and we're gonna compare this to what we heard earlier. Then we are gonna get a bit critical of the right too, because Chris is right. There's some wrong there. All right, so focus on the family. You don't get much more conservative than that. The headline here is "How to Survive Thanksgiving Dinner with Family." But you can enjoy time together and avoid digging out from family friction by making wise decisions about how you deal with stress and support your spouse. All right. Next one, I believe. That's the source for this article. The headline is Eight Steps for Dealing with a Relationally Tense Thanksgiving. Then it just has a brief description. One, invite Jesus' presence and perspective into your situation. Years ago, my husband and I periodically spent time with an extended family, and then it continues. So, right off the bat, the headlines obviously it's a different feel, right? These are definitely not as aggressive as the articles that we just read the headlines from the left, right? That doesn't mean there aren't any from the right out there, but when I did searching for these articles, I found a lot more of aggressive titles, of confrontational titles on the left than I did from the right. But
Yes.
uh, Chris, you and I said something to you earlier, and that you were like, actually, I kind of agree with that, because we were discussing how both the right and the left, can be rude, can be aggressive, condescending, all that stuff, right? And I said, well, the interesting thing is, I think the main difference is that when the right when when the right takes the steps to be a bit condescending, especially, they try to do it in the most nice way possible. Meaning they don't dive in. They'll find ways to say things, but say them in a nice way and not necessarily a loud way. So it's not that the right is necessarily always better, more well behaved than the left. It's just that I feel like at least the first step is the right tends to more calmly and more politely insult, kind of like from the South kind of thing, like "bless your heart." I feel like the
Lisa,
right has
I
a bit more of
found
a
it.
yeah. I feel like the right has a bit more of a "bless your heart" approach to it than the left, which is just ah. Oh,
Right.
so Chris, what's your take on that?
Well, generally speaking, though, and that's what I was getting at in the last thing. I mean, I do think that the left is worse when it comes to "you must believe with me, otherwise you're Hitler," that sort of thing. But I have found that certain religious conservatives, I don't want to say conservative Christians because it's not just Christians, you can see this among conservative Jews and everything like that. People who are a little bit more fundamentalist in their way of looking at things tend to assume that everybody must agree with them. So that is kind of where I see this. So, you know so when I was talking about the people on the right who can be a little bit more confrontational, a little bit more arrogant in their views, but because I mean, hey, I can kind of understand it. You believe that you have the will of God on your side, so of course you're going to be a little bit arrogant about that, but that is to somebody who may not agree with you 100%. Arrogant is how it comes across, and you're
Mm,
going to get pushback for appearing arrogant. So there's a better way
yeah.
of handling it if you are a conservative Christian, conservative Jew, or something like that. And I think that the better way of handling it is like like they said on ibelieve.com, invite Jesus's presence and perspective into your situation. Did Jesus get upset and sometimes show a temper? Yes, he did, but under pretty extraordinary circumstances. Conversations weren't something that Jesus started throwing tables in the temple over. That's not what he did. So
Well, Chris,
you
not
know
to cut you off too much, but if I go to Thanksgiving dinner, right, and my family tries to collect taxes at dinner, we're not. I might flip that table. No, I'm just I just
Well,
had to.
and that might be a left-leaning family who wants to collect taxes from you. So, and guys, I'm taking shots at everybody tonight because I do think that humans, just in general, are really bad at this. So that's kind of why I'm doing this. I'm not really trying to pick on any one group, to be quite honest. I'm really just kind of picking on humanity, and encouraging us to do better. That's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to do. But with the thing about, like I said, the religious conservatives and their devotion to God and everything like that, and I absolutely appreciate that because I'm also a man of faith as well, and I totally understand that. But there is a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, and
Hmm.
it kind of reminds me of a situation that I had very recently with a woman that I work with, and this woman, I won't say her name, but this woman is like, I don't know, just the ideal person when it comes to interacting with other people. She can convey what she wants, but she does it in the most kind way. She and of course, because of that kindness, you want to respond kindly right back to her, and that sort of thing it's very effective. And the way she treats her customers and stuff like that, she's also extremely kind. And so I went up to her and I was like, blank, that's what I'm calling her right now. I was like, I don't know for sure what your religion is, but my guess is that you are a very faithful Christian.
Mm.
And she turned around to me and she said, why, yes, I am a Christian. And I was like, well, you show it. And the thing is, that's what I'm saying to my religious friends out there. I'm saying,
Yeah.
be like her.
Yeah.
She knows how to show it. She knows how to get her point across. She's not being a pushover, but she does everything in a way that is palatable to someone who may not necessarily agree. So, yes, be a good Christian. That should guide your way. Be a good Jew. That should guide your way.
So, in that though, Chris, because this actually is great. Vinny, you commented. So, in the folks, everyone, our good friend Vinny, a regular viewer, he has commented. Which, by the way, we encourage you to comment as well, whether we're live or not. We love the feedback. Vinny says that he's glad we survived Halloween. It's been a while. But I want to go to a specific comment that Vinny made, and I'm going to click on it right here and bring it to show it, right? Because I think it feeds into what we're saying here. All right, so I'd be arrogant too if God was standing on my side of the table too. So, okay, thank you, Vinny, for that comment because it does bring me to a point that how I feel that people on the right, conservatives, especially religious conservatives, how they can aggressively and inappropriately and rudely approach these situations. As we said earlier, the left is a bit more prone to the I am screaming, like my story about when I was a leftist and went off at my in-laws' friends. However, I've noticed that when conservatives, when the right, and they can get aggressive and physical as well. Don't get me wrong, but they tend to approach it as a picking, as a poking, right? Now this goes out to the right. Okay. I get it. I believe that God's perspective, I believe that just generally I'm in the right, being on the right. I do. However, that God's on our side of the table, as Vinny put it. However, we got to be humble in that as much as we can. And I'm not going to preach this to you as if I'm perfect. I fail often. Trust me. But I've noticed one of the things that we tend to do is, especially when we know we have a very emotionally sensitive person on the left, I'm not saying don't address them if they bring up stupid at the dinner table. right? This stream is all about the fact that we believe we should be able to discuss politics and the culture in a civil fashion with our loved ones. But if they bring up something, try not to pick at it. Try to have a discussion in a truly civil and humble fashion. For example, I learned I will admit I can bring up topics in a way that I know is going to be triggering. Like, for example, if they're bringing up gender studies or gender identity, I was interacting with someone who identifies as a trans man. I refer to her as her, of course. And when we were engaging, this was not the holidays, but it's an example. When we were engaging and she was insisting that she is indeed a man, I said, well, my brother, when is your next prostate exam? And now that I would not, if you have a relative at the table who identifies as a trans man, a woman who is confused about her gender, I wouldn't necessarily lead with that. When's your next prostate exam? Because that's obviously confrontational.
You just almost made me spit, Kevin. Because that actually kind of sounds like something I do. But hey, guess what? I mean, this is a good point, though, Kevin. We can all be dicks.
Yeah,
And I'm just as capable of being a dick as anybody else. And I think that that's the whole thing with what we're talking about here. But anyway, continue your story.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
So Vinny just followed this up. Vinny's disagreeing with me in the comments this evening, folks. Love having you, Vinny. Vinny goes, nah, Kevin, I disagree. I'm not being humble against a Satanist. Which, Vinny, did you see one of my recent videos where I covered actually a local politician who went in a Satanist store and also focused in on the progress flag? I'm not saying I'm not saying be sweet against the Satanist or give them leeway. However, humility is certainly a value to reach for, to strive for. I do believe that. Uh, but that doesn't mean be a doormat. I think even as Christians, even as conservatives, we are increasingly confusing those two. I think for too long, though, we were doormats, meaning a leftist would say something at Thanksgiving dinner and we'd be quiet, right? Because we didn't want to cause any real thing. That was my experience when I was on the left. I could just run over the conservatives in my life because, they wouldn't really challenge me. They'd say, let's change the subject, right? I'm not saying do that. That's being a doormat. I am saying approach it with a bit of humility in a way that highlights the errors in the individual's quote unquote logic that they are expressing.
Well,
Chris, do you have?
yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, Vinny, is be the example you want to see in the other person. And so, nothing against you, bud, but I mean, I understand where Kevin's coming from here. And let me throw this at you, Vinny. Here's the thing. I understand you don't want to be humble against a Satanist or something like that. But at the same time, I don't think that that's what we're talking about. That's not going to be the average situation that people are going to be encountering, especially at
Mm,
Thanksgiving. But let's say it was. Let's say that that is what you're encountering. Here's the thing. There's probably a reason that that person has a beef with God. And you
mm,
hitting them with more God, 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 God is just going to drive them further away. And I do know that from a Christian perspective, I'm not a Christian, I'm a Jew. I don't give a damn about converting anyone to my religion, but Christianity does care about that. Okay. So, from a Christian perspective, what have you done by hitting them over the head with God, God, God? You've driven them away. So you've actually, in your own way, driven someone away from God even further because they're already not there.
yeah.
So, and to bring this to a personal level, here's what I'm going to say. I know lots of gay people out there who obviously have a desire to commune with our divine creator, but they don't because of how poorly they've been treated by people of faith.
Yeah.
And the last thing that you want to do to somebody in that type of situation is hit them over the head with dogma,
Yeah.
because you're just going to accomplish the exact opposite with them, because that's how humans are.
Yeah.
They tend to throw up walls as soon as you confront their beliefs. So I'm just saying, don't give up on your beliefs, Vinny. That's not what Kevin is saying. That's not what I'm saying. Don't give up on your beliefs or anything, but find a way to convey your beliefs in a way that might actually bring this person to God. Because if you're a Christian, and I think you are, Vinny, if you're a Christian, that is one of your big callings, is to bring people to God. So you need to make sure that that's what you're actually doing.
And make sure that you're speaking in a certain spirit. And what I mean by that is you're genuinely speaking in a Christian spirit, because we all get angry. And it's interesting because remember earlier we used the example of the right when they get confrontational with the left, while the left screams, the right has a little bit more of a bless your heart approach. I think one of the other things is it's amazing. I remember one time, well, more than once, but I remember a specific time where a girl used. I heard a young woman say, "I'll pray for you" in the meanest way. Like it was an insulting, condescending, like, "Oh, honey, I'll pray for you," and I was like, so it is meant where you can take a statement as "I'll pray for you" and turn it in "Oh, my dear, I'll pray for you." It's just like
Right.
it was funny because even that, right? If you with your tone of voice can be confrontational. Now again, I want to reiterate: Chris and I are not saying that you be a doormat. All right, I
Oh,
get
Lord,
it.
no.
It is stressful. I experienced it from being a leftist and going at people on the right at family gatherings to being unapologetically conservative and trying to appease the house that I was home. It was I'm a guest in someone's home to try not to bring it up. But where I am now, and I let everyone know this, including my in-laws, right? I will not bring up the politics, but if someone else brings it up and says something incredibly stupid and ignorant, I will respectfully approach it. That's for sure. And
As you should, Kevin, as you should. And I mean, I think that, I mean, I kind of like the direction that this went, because
yeah,
it obviously the people who are listening to our podcast are way more likely to be conservative. So we can sit here and beat up on how badly leftists behave, because we all, pretty much everybody watching this podcast knows that they behave badly. We all know that, blah, and we could sit here and just bitch about them. I think that what we're kind of offering here is some good advice to conservatives about how to deal with our leftist family. And guess what we're talking about? We're talking about humility. We're talking about, meeting people where they are and that sort of thing. And I'll tell you what, that is generally speaking what I have seen from conservatives, and that's great. But it's not universal. So, I mean, if you have a conservative friend out there who's confrontational, who wants to beat a leftist over the head or something like that, talk to them about, how maybe to best approach this stuff. And maybe it's easier for me. Maybe it's easier for you, Kevin, because we both have, either been on the left or at least interacted with them a lot in my case. So we know leftists, we know how to talk to them, and that that gives us an advantage. So, but seriously, if you're interested in actually changing someone's mind, beating them over the head with your own personal dogma is just not the way to go about it.
yeah. Well, so Chris, the reason I giggled a little bit was because I did look down at Vinny and he commented again. He said, Kamala voters watch this podcast too. They're spying on us. See, I'm a bit more concerned about Clinton voters, Hillary Clinton voters, because
Because
we
I'm
know
gonna
we know how
suicide
the Clintons
myself one
do.
day.
We know how the Clintons do there. No. So I actually want to bring an example of it up, Chris, because I think conversations really need to be, if we're going to engage with leftists at Thanksgiving, right, at family gatherings, we need to take the 80-20 approach, right? Listen, 80% of the time, speak 20% of the time. What I mean by that is, if it's someone you really love in your family, try to ask them probing questions, that gently probe. Like, for example, and I've asked this in a condescending way, but I've also asked this question in a very respectful way. I actually asked this question of Chris once when we first met. The issue of abortion, right? Because many times when I discuss abortion with someone who is pro-abortion, I know they want to say pro-choice, but what choice are you pro? Just bringing that up. I get, obviously they go directly to grape and family interminglings, right, as reasons to abort an unborn child. And I will say to them, all right, I want to know this person's motives. I want to know, are they using fringe examples to justify all abortions? Or are they genuinely, you know, bringing this topic up? So I will ask them, if I were to grant you your exceptions, right? If I let's just theoretically say I were to grant you them, would you be okay with banning all other abortions? Now, this usually ends up with a volatile response because they know where I'm going, because they know that if they say that they wouldn't be okay, they know they're using the fringe reasons for getting an abortion, the minority for getting an abortion, to justify all abortions. Now, to Chris's credit, when we had this conversation, he was probably one of only like 3 people at the time that I'd ever had this conversation with who said, yes, I'd be okay with banning all other abortions. Chris and I had a conversation. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but Chris and I shared an amazing conversation, and we grew as friends as a result of that. And I think that following that example helps you grow as family as well. Because, like I said, a probing question. You just got to ask a probing question. If someone says, for example, they, because I personally, I know sometimes disagree. I believe a lot of people who are trapped in trans ideology, they are coming from a place of they don't want to be hateful people, right? So if someone is pushing something like they believe in that minors should go on puberty blockers, right? Instead of being like, that's disgusting, which I do feel it is, ask them why they believe that. What is at the root of their belief that a minor should go on puberty blockers? And often you'll hear them, a person who's maybe a little bit more genuine and doesn't want to be hateful, be like, oh, well, we'll help them in their identity, in their path in life, and it will make things easier. I disagree, but at least if that response, why I full-heartedly disagree with it, tells me that there's more of a discussion to be had. Now, if they just fall out, push back, and swear at me, all right, then it's a different discussion. But Chris, what would you say of that example, especially? I mean, I do think, and I know I know I'm still a little bit in the minority here with this in some circles. I do think that for a lot of people who push a lot of things, it's because to them they feel it's the nice thing to do. They feel it's the kind thing to do. The problem is that, as we know, the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
Well, I mean, I think that that's the thing that I'm trying to get at. You're right. The path to hell is paved with good intentions, for sure. Um, but, if you want to correct society, if you really want to change hearts and minds, beating people over the head is not the way to go. I'll tell you what, I mean, I'm gonna try to make sure this Thanksgiving when I get together with family, and of course, just like you, I'm gonna be asked what I'm up to.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, like you, my life is largely political. So if you want to know what I'm doing, guess what I'm going to talk about? I'm going to talk about politics. I'm not the average person. Maybe the average person can avoid these conversations, I guess, if they want to. I don't think you should, but a person like me, a person like Kevin, we're not going to be able to avoid it because, quite frankly, if you want to ask me what I'm
Mm,
doing and you're going to tell me that I can't talk about politics, well, then we're just not going to have a conversation.
yeah.
I'll just sit there quiet and not say anything to you, and I'll leave the house. That's basically what's going to happen. So I think that for me, if people ask me what I'm up to, like I said, I'm sure that that question will come up. I'll talk about what I'm up to. And if people have questions, I'm going to make sure that I calmly explain where I'm coming from and, listen to their objections and try to find I think part of it, and I said something about meeting people where they are.
Mm-hmm.
um Try to find I'm going to try to find a way to see, it's like, okay, so this is where this person is. How best can I, at the very least, not necessarily change their mind, because you're not going to probably change anyone's minds in these conversations,
Yeah.
but at the very least, how can I plant a seed that gives them something to think about so that they
Mm-hmm.
might change their mind, eventually. And that's the thing that people need to realize. And again, this goes back to all of humanity. I mean, just talking about everyone in general. You guys need to get the idea that you're going to change someone's mind in front of you out of your heads right now. That's not going to happen. Okay, kids? It's just not going to happen. That's not how humans work. And I'm
It's
surprised
very
I have to tell.
unlikely.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm surprised I have to tell you all this, but it seems like I do. So I'm telling you this. You're not going to do that.
So Chris, because I want to jump on that quick because my story from my leftist days was a great example of that. Right, I didn't change in that moment. The way it went down made me look back on it. Hindsight being 2020. So I think then people are asking, well, what's the point of the conversation? The point of the conversation is, first of all, I use it as an example to improve my communication skills, especially with people I love. Right. So it's a bit of a personal benefit. The benefit for them is that if a seed is planted, even if they ask one question of themselves, right? Even if they ask one question of themselves, that can change so much. And I know that from personal experience. But I want to go to the comments quick because Vinny is doing further clarification because Chris villainized him. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so
Good Lord, no,
I
Benny.
know, right? All right. So Vinny said, so basically I'm saying that I'm taking the God approach. If you stop an evil person from being evil, then people won't see their evil come out. Smart people will naturally gravitate toward better lives. Now, the thing is first of all, I've realized that there are plenty of smart people who are also stupid. I've known some people who their IQs in so many ways are off the charts, yet they believe a man can become a woman. And I know they're highly intelligent individuals. Like they can read a book and memorize every single word. And I've met people who have photographic memories, yet they also preach this stuff. So, um, now as far as stopping a person from being evil. See, I don't think you can necessarily do that. I think you make people reconsider their actions, right? But at the end of the day, and I know I'm nitpicking here. I'm sorry, it's just my nature. I feel like I'm already, I'm a naggy mom. I guess I got it there. Is that truthfully at the end of the day, the only person who can stop themselves from committing an act of evil is that individual. I mean,
Right.
truthfully, committing being evil or following an evil path, the only person who can really do that, I lost Chris, but I'm going to keep going. The only person that can really do that is, in my opinion, it obviously is that individual. But I get that instinct, Vinny. I really do. I full-heartedly get that instinct, 100%. Vinny, you laughing because Chris fell off from us? No, I'm sure he's going to be back shortly. Uh, but yeah, so I think and will they naturally gravitate toward better lives? I don't know. If they're smart, I guess you could argue that. Yes, you could argue that. There we go. There is Chris. Hey, Chris.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, guys, just a little internet connection thing. Just so you all know, I switched over to T-Mobile's internet, and it's really great. But because it goes over a cellular connection, and it is a new technology for T-Mobile that they're rolling out across the country, there's still a few glitches here and there. And anyway, we here on my end, the Barrett Harris household, we're trying to put this to the test. We're conducting the stream while Nathan, my husband, is also watching TV streaming in the bedroom.
See, I'm just going with the theory that everybody hates Chris at this point. So
Well,
no,
there
but
is
Chris,
that too. There is that too. But I
yeah,
did hear most of what you had to
right,
say, Kevin, and I'll
yeah.
just let me put it this way, Vinny. I see where you're coming from, and I think that you bring up a completely valid point. But here's the thing that I want you to consider. I think that what Kevin and I are doing here is talking to people on the right about how to approach people. Now, of course, this is just our opinions, and maybe
Mhm.
we're wrong or something like that. But the thing is like ultimately, if you want to convince people, and if you want to change their minds, there is a way to do it. And being confrontational is simply not the way to do it. And all I can say, Vinny, is take it from a politician whose actual job is to simply make people agree with me. I understand how this works. And so, I mean, you need to know a little bit of human psychology, and I have a background in that. So, you know, just be careful if you're really wanting to enter into these debates with folks. Just be careful about how you do it, because if you do beat people over the head, they're going to beat you right back.
Yeah, and I think also, Chris, and I'm about to go to an extreme example. I pray that none of you have this example. None of you experience this example, but I'm also thinking about some of those extreme examples, right? Because we kind of have to. Someone flipping the table. Obviously, don't just sit there and let the table hit you, kind of thing, right? We're talking diffusing. Like, yeah, we're not saying be a doormat, but we also, I want to say, we got to have an approach to shut things down if they truly do go to a place that we're like, no, this is not the place, this is not the time. And you might, like, I'll give you an example. If someone were to say something specifically like this, not only would I shut it down, I probably would never have a conversation with that family member again to any large degree. And I'm about to use an extreme example here, but I still think, because we got to remind ourselves we're in someone's home, especially if us and if you and that other family member are both guests in someone else's home. You got to keep that in your mind as well, right? You are two guests and you're going to cause a conflict in someone else's home. So you got to remember to be respectful there. But if I was across the table from a family member, especially if I was in someone else's home, if we both were, and they tried to bring up the discussion of, I don't know, basically sympathies for maps, right? Oh, hell no. Mm-mm. That conversation, and I'd be direct. I'd be like, well, this conversation is stopping specifically because I do not want to, in front of all these people, say what's on my mind right now. I don't think you want me to either. So this stops right now. And I would actually work to change that subject. That was if it was mainly I respect. If it happened to be the person's home that I was in and they did that, I'd be like, as much as a part of me wants to throw down in
Mm.
that moment, I'm standing up and I'm walking out of that damn house. And I'm probably never going to return. I mean, I don't know. I know I'm using an extreme example here, but Chris, what would take that extreme example? What would you do? What would you say?
Well, okay. In all fairness to you, Kevin, I mean, I'll be quite honest. If someone is using that as something that they agree with and they actually know what they're talking about, um, then that suddenly becomes a person I don't want anything to do with,
Mhm.
period.
Yep.
And I don't care if they're a family member, it could be my mother. I mean, if she's
Yep.
coming at me saying defending maps, our relationship's over. It's just simply over.
Yep.
Because I'm sorry, someone who has a sexual desire towards children is not going to be my friend. And by the way, Mom, I know you're watching. I'll just make sure everyone knows. I know that you do
Well,
not, you probably, bless your heart, Mom, I love you to pieces. You probably don't even know what a map is. But, but
Chris, why you
I,
put your poor mother through so much?
I
Like, come
know.
on
Well,
now.
my whole family has to deal with me, and I feel bad for all of them, to be quite honest. But I mean, sure, there are going to be lines in the sand,
Yep.
for sure. And it's like if you're talking about pedophilia in a
Yep.
positive way, which is something coming from the left, guys, and we do need to
Oh, it
remember this.
is.
And now I'm starting to feel more comfortable because we're starting to beat up on the left. We gave some healthy criticism to the right, but now I'm happy because we're beating up on the left. Um, so um my the thing is, obviously there needs to be a line in the sand. You can't be okay with that.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
this is kind of an interesting thing that you brought up, Kevin. And the thing about maps might actually be a conversation that people are going to start hearing about in their Thanksgiving dinners this year. And for those who don't know, a MAP stands for
Mm,
minor attracted persons. That's what, or a person, minor attracted person. And what their idea is they're trying to say that it's a sexual orientation akin to heterosexuality, bisexuality, or homosexuality. Well, we all know that that's bullshit. Um, but the left, Democrats, people within that group are actually pushing this idea that we need to have some sort of sympathy for these people. Now,
yeah.
I'm going to go right out on a limb here as a candidate. I want everyone to know, by the way, I'm running for Missouri's House District 21, and I believe that any map, the cure for them is a wood chipper. Okay. So we're just going to
Mm.
put that right out there. So,
Wood chippers for the holidays.
yeah, exactly. So, and you can all quote me on that and everything. I absolutely believe in that. Um, but it is something that's probably going to come up because my husband Nathan actually encountered someone at work, and she came up to him, and she knows that I'm into all this political stuff, and she wanted to know. It's like, I've heard about this MAP thing, minor attracted persons again, and she was like, they're talking about it like it's something that we should accept or whatever.
Mm,
And Nathan had the wherewithal to say, oh, you're talking about pedophiles. What they're
mhm,
doing is telling you that we need to be accepting of pedophiles.
mm. Well, could
I just don't think that that's something you can accept. And I do bet you anything, guys, this is something you're going to hear about at Thanksgiving this year. So make sure the people understand that when they're talking about maps, they're talking about pedophiles. And
mhm,
if they think that there's somehow or other a difference, if they say it's like, oh, well, the person has this attraction, but they don't act on it, remind them that Chris Barrett from Missouri's District 21 says that regardless of whether they act on it or not, wood chipper is the cure.
Oh goodness. Oh yeah. There's a slight. The difference is the one you get to choose your wood chipper. No. Anyway. So yeah, it's absolutely insane. Vinny in the comments, he's saying the left created maps. That's absolutely true. I mean, John Money. He mentions John Money. John Money was a sick individual. Truly is at the center of so much of this insanity and, to be honest, demonic evil that is in our culture right now. I do, however, want to bring up, because then I think this will also help us wrap up. I got to be up at 4 a.m., folks, my time, Eastern time. So, early morning for me. So I think, Vinny, we're going to use this comment of yours as to help us get there. So, Vinny says, Chris, oh, this is directed at you, Chris. Instead of walking up to people being confrontational, I'm actually defending my moral positions. I'm not throwing the first hit. The left already threw the first hit. I'm conquering debate. So, since you're mentioned by name, Chris, I'll let you respond to that one first.
Again, Vinny, it's not that I disagree with what you're saying. I totally understand where you're coming from, my friend. I mean, just understand I'm telling you how to convince people of things. And if you're interested in being right, and that's all you're interested in, then continue doing what it sounds like you're doing.
Mm,
You'll be right and you'll be alone. But if you want to actually change hearts and minds, there is a different way of approaching it.
yeah.
And being moralistic and everything is probably not the way to go about it. I mean, it sounds probably kind of sneaky what I'm saying, but I mean, it's just human psychology. And like I said, I do have background in this. I found psychology to be very fascinating during my college years. Uh-oh, Kevin went dark.
You can still see me though, right?
Yeah, we can still see you.
Yeah, the battery
Um,
for my light ring is horrible, and I'm not turning the light on. So continue.
yeah.
Sorry.
So, but basically what I'm saying, Vinny, and it's up to you, man. You do you. I'm not sitting here criticizing you. I'm just saying that from my point of view, uh what you're saying sounds like you're going to be right, and from everything I know about you, I totally agree with a lot of your beliefs, but you're going to be right alone. And so there is a better way of approaching this stuff. And I think that, and maybe it's because I'm looking to go into politics, so I'm interested in truly changing hearts and minds, because I know that that's where I'm going to actually benefit. And maybe you, as someone who isn't doing that, maybe you don't care about it as much. And I can see that. I can totally understand that. But I really do think that if we're going to have actual productive conversations in these uh, holiday conversations that come up, we all need to tone it down a bit
Mm,
and just approach people where they are,
yeah.
and not moralize to them, not, I'm on the side of truth and I'm right and blah, blah, blah.
Mm,
Because really, doesn't
yeah.
that sound like
So
the left when you do that?
I do. So I want to say something quick, by the way. Vinny, I'm adding an extra timestamp to this stream when I get the chance to edit it. It's going to be called Vinny Enters the Chats, just because I think we've had a great conversation starting with Vinny's first comment that I brought up on screen. So, Vinny,
Well,
you're about to
I
become
always
part of it.
appreciate Vinny,
I,
and generally speaking, I agree with him. I mean, it
yeah,
sounds like that we probably disagree on our approaches, but that's okay. I
yeah,
mean, I think that that's what I'm saying. Ultimately, is it's like we can disagree. It's cool. We just disagree,
yeah.
and now we'll just leave it at that.
Well, I specifically, Chris, I want to touch on the last part there, right? He said the left already threw the first hit, and specifically the last, I'm conquering debates. So here's the thing. Notice early, well, I know some of you might not have been there initially. We talked about it discussing and talking about politics at Thanksgiving. We didn't say debating politics at Thanksgiving because Chris knows this. We've had this conversation many times. I've been invited to debate people on the left by a friend. He wants me to debate a very specific individual. Now, he said the goal of this debate was to find common ground. And I said to him respectfully, I said, then you shouldn't call it a debate. You should call it a conversation, a discussion. Because if you're calling it a debate, debates have very specific kinds of structure. And debates are not about finding common ground. They're about winning, right? So I personally, I would not approach discussing politics or culture at a family gathering, especially Thanksgiving, from a perspective of debating. I
Right.
would approach it from a perspective of having a conversation.
Yeah,
Personally,
and I think ultimately that's what both of us were saying, Kevin. It's not about being right in the moment. It's about planting that seed that might
hmm
change someone's mind. And that's
yep,
what we're trying to do here. That's the kind of advice that we're trying to give.
absolutely. And Vinny says that he understands you, Chris. So,
All
with
right.
that though,
Good, good.
I do have to get ready for bed, folks. It is 10:30 p.m. my time, and as I said, I have to actually, well, I have to be up by 4, so I'm probably gonna get up by 3:30 a.m. just to be sure. So I need to get my butt to bed. It's been a pleasure, Chris. I think this has been, I've loved this conversation. How
Yeah,
about
it's
you?
been fun. Yeah,
All right,
I
we are.
like it too. All right, guys. We'll see you on the other side.
Yeah, God bless. All right, everyone, and we are live